In this lesson, we are going to cover a very important topic, and this topic is factoring trinomials. So all of the problems you're going to have today will have three terms in them, because remember, trinomial means three terms. Before we actually get into factoring, we're going to lay a little bit of foundation work. So my first example here is going to be in the foundation work. So this information is embedded inside the factoring questions. So on A, I want you to pick two factors, which means tell me two numbers that multiply for 12 and have a sum of 7. So pick two numbers that multiply for 12 and add for 7. If you know them off the top of your head, fantastic. If you do not, then I would make a little chart. So I would start here with 12. And what are things that go into 12? Well, you can always do 1 and 12. 2 goes into 12 6 times. 3 goes into 12 4 times. 5 does not. 6, then we're already back. So these are the only ones that go into it. And I want to know which one adds for 7. So if I add these up, which one of these pairs would add for 7? And hopefully everybody says that the factors would be positive 3 and positive 4. So one thing to keep in mind is the sums. Okay, if your product is a positive number, which ours was positive 12, and your sum is also a positive 7, the only way you can do that is if both of your factors are positive. Because a positive plus a positive is still a positive, and a positive times a positive is positive. So that's just kind of key to remember your signs. So the next one, I want two numbers that multiply for negative 42 and add for 1. So multiply for negative 42 and add for 1. If you know it, great. If not, we're going to make a little chart. Okay. I'll come back to the signs in just a second. So let's just start with numbers that go into 42. Well, 1 and 42. 2 and 21. 3 and 14. 4 does not. 5 does not. 6 and 7. So those are all the ones that go into 42. Now this time, our product is not a positive number. Our product is a negative. So if my product is a negative, then I don't care what the sum is. I don't care if the sum is positive or a negative, because the only way you can multiply for a negative is to say one positive and one negative. So you're going through here and you're saying, all right, which one of these pairs can I get a 1 out of? One of the numbers has to be positive and one of them has to be negative. So hopefully everybody goes, oh, if I have negative 6 and positive 7, they will add for 1 and also multiply for negative 42. So the two factors that you would choose is a negative 6 and a positive 7. Okay, next case. We're multiplying for negative 30 and adding for negative 13. Once again, I'll come back to the signs in a minute. 30, you're looking at 1 and 30, 2 and 15, 3 and 10, 4 does not, 5 and 6. Now, if my product is a negative, once again, I don't care what the sum is if my product is a negative, because you have to have one positive and one negative. So we don't care if the sum is a positive or a negative. Okay, so which one of these, now remember, one of them is positive and one of them is negative, will add for negative 13. And hopefully everybody will say positive 2 and negative 15. So my factors are positive 2 and negative 15. Okay, last case that can happen. We're multiplying for positive 24 and adding for negative 11. So 24, it would be 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, 4 and 6. And my product is a positive, and my sum is a negative. Now, if your product is a positive, you've got two choices, because you can choose either two negative factors or two positive factors, because a negative times a negative is a positive, and a positive times a positive is a positive. So which one do I choose? Well, look at your sum. If your sum is negative, then that means you want to choose the two negatives. So which one of these can I make both numbers negative and they add for negative 11? Well, that would be negative 3 and negative 8. So my factors are negative 3 and negative 8. Okay, we have to do this within the problem. So let's scroll on. Okay, here's some key information for you. It says factoring is basically undoing multiplication. So when we were doing multiplication problems and we were making the box, you would start with two parentheses, like 2x minus 3 and x plus 1. And then you would make a box and you would end with something that looked like 2x squared minus x minus 3. So we're going backwards. We're going to start with a trinomial and we're going to end with the two parentheses. So factoring is just the opposite of multiplication. Okay, so here we go. We have to figure out the product, the sum, and the factors first. So to do the product, your product is going to be A times C. Well, you might say, what is A? Well, A is going to be, okay, so A is always located in front of x squared. And C is always your plain number at the end. So my product in front of x squared would be a 1. And my C is negative 15. So 1 times negative 15 is negative 15. So my product is negative 15. Okay, my sum, so I'm going to use S for sum. My sum is always the letter B. And B is in front of X. So if I look in the middle in front of X, we have negative 2. So my job is to find two factors that multiply for negative 15 and add for 2. So if you need, make a little chart over here. Here's 15, 1 and 15, 3 and 5. If my product is a negative, then that means I have to use one negative and one positive. Okay, and I want it to add for negative 2, so that would be positive 3 and negative 5. Okay, once we have the factors picked, then we're going to go to the original problem, and we have x squared minus 2x minus 15. That was my original problem. And what we're going to do is we're going to take out the b. We're going to take out the middle term. And I'm going to take the middle term out and replace it with the two factors. So one of my factors was negative 5. Now the middle term has an x with it, so you have to make sure you put an x there. And my other factor was positive 3. Because won't negative 5x plus 3x give me negative 2x? Okay. Once I've expanded the problem from 3 terms to 4 terms, then this is where we're going to make a box again. Except for, remember, factoring is the opposite of multiplying. So this time we're going to start by putting the terms inside the box. So put the 4 terms inside the box. And then our job is to come out with the outside information. Okay, to do the outside information, I'm going to look up and down. So I'm going to look at these two boxes right here. I highlighted in gold. X squared and 3x. Okay, what is the GCF? What does x squared and 3x have in common? Well, they both have an x. Okay, then I'm going to do the same thing on the next column. This column, I've got negative 5x and negative 15. Well, here, I can't start with the negative. Okay, so if you start with the negative, you got to automatically pull out a negative. And then GCF, well, each one is divisible by 5. And then we're going to do the same thing going sideways. Okay, so my row, x squared and negative 5x, their GCF is an x. And then the last row, 3x and negative 15, their GCF is a 3. Now, if you want to double check yourself, then you could pretend like you're multiplying. So let's check. X times x, does that give me x squared? Yes. X times negative 5, does it give me negative 5x? Yes. 3 times x, does that give me 3x? Yes. 3 times negative 5, does that give me negative 15? Yes. So we know we have the correct information on the outside of the box. So the top makes one parentheses. So x minus 5 makes a parentheses. And the side makes a second parentheses, which is x plus 3. And remember, your final answer will be 2 sets of parentheses. So let's kind of write down a few steps here off to the side. Okay, so you have to do the product, sum, and factors. But once you've done the product, sum, and factors, then you're going to expand to 4 terms. So that's where you take the middle out and you replace it with each factor. Okay. Then we're going to draw a box. And we're going to put the terms inside it. So you're going to draw a box and you're going to put the 4 terms inside. Then we're going to take the GCF of each row and column. And then we're going to write our answer as 2 sets of parentheses. Okay, so let's try it again. And once you get the hang of it, I promise it goes faster. I know right now it seems really sketchy because you're just learning it, but it does get quicker the more you do. All right, product. 4 times -7. 4 times -7 is -28. Sum. Sum is the middle number, and the middle number is 12. So 28. So all the things that multiply for 28. So 1 and 28, 2 and 14, 4 and 7. Now remember, if my product is a negative, that means one of my factors is a negative and one of my factors is a positive. So make one number negative, make one number positive, and which ones add for 12. And hopefully everybody says, oh, if I do -2 and +14, I would get +12. Okay, so now we expand the problem. So keep the first term. Don't write the middle one. Instead of writing the middle one, put the 2 factors. So -2x plus 14x minus 7. Then you're going to take those 4 terms and you're going to put them inside a box. So here's my box. Put them inside the box. 4x squared, -2x, 14x, -7. And then we're going to GCF every column and every row. So I'm going to start with columns up and down. So 4 and 14 are both divisible by 2. And each one also has an x. Oh, can't start with a negative. Everybody notice right here, I start with a -2x. Can't do that. So this has to be negative. And then 2 and 7 are only divisible by 1. And no x there. So sideways. 4 and 2 are both divisible by 2. And each one has an x. Check. And 14 and 7 are both divisible by 7. So you're looking at 2x minus 1 and 2x plus 7. And here, really important thing to remember, maybe I didn't stress this enough on the first one, but inside your box, if box 2 or box 3 are negative, then you're going to have a negative with your GCF, because remember, you can't start with a negative, so you'd put a negative out there. Okay, let's try again. Product, 3 times 6. Well, 3 times 6 is 18. Sum is negative 19. If you can do this without making the list, then you don't have to make the list, but some people are visual and they need the list. But what multiplies for 18 that adds for negative 19? So you can do 1 and 18, 2 and 9, 3 and 6. Now, if my product is positive, I've got 2 choices. I can do plus plus or negative negative. That's when I look at my sum, and if my sum is negative, I say, ooh, I must choose the 2 negatives. So then hopefully everybody says, oh, if I pick negative 1 and negative 18, that will add for negative 19. So now expand your problem. So 3x squared minus 1x minus 18x plus 6. Okay, make a box. Put your terms inside the box. And then GCF each row and column. So I always like to go up and down first. 3 and 18 are both divisible by 3. Each one has an x. Oh, on the other up and down, can't start with a negative, so take a negative out. 1 and 6 are only divisible by 1. Sideways, 3 and 1 are only divisible by 1, but they each have an x, so you could have 1x or x. Sideways, oh, can't start with a negative, so I got to put a negative out here. And then 18 and 6 are both divisible by 6. Remember, pick the highest thing that goes into both. So then you're looking at 3x minus 1 and x minus 6. Okay, that's going to be the part 1 for our notes. So I'm going to make a second video for the backside of the notes.